Leo Dicaprio and Kate Winslet spent decades telling the world they were just friends. But what he finally admitted 25 years later left her stunned. For years, he stayed silent, never crossed the line, not when the cameras were rolling, not when Titanic changed their lives. But recently, something shifted, and what Leo finally revealed is something Kate never expected to hear. She thought she knew everything about him, but even after a lifetime of friendship, there was one truth Leo never told her, until now. When Titanic began filming in 1996, no one, least of all Leo and Kate, could have predicted how it would change their lives. At just 21 and 22, they were thrust into global fame overnight, forever linked by the roles that made them stars. But behind the scenes, something deeper was forming, a connection that neither time nor distance ever seemed to break. They leaned on each other during the chaos of filming. Between grueling shoots, icy water, and Hollywood pressures, Leo and Kate found something rare. Someone who understood, not just the demands of the job, but the fear, the exhaustion, the vulnerability that came with it. They laughed together, they trusted each other, and they became inseparable, not romantically but emotionally. And maybe that was the quiet beginning of the truth Leo never told her. While fans around the world obsessed over whether Jack and Rose were secretly real, Leo and Kate drew a line. They insisted they were just friends. And for years, they maintained that story. Through award seasons, red carpets, and reunions, the narrative never changed. But looking back, some moments didn't quite add up. There was the way Leo would pause before talking about her in interviews. The way Kate would get visibly emotional when speaking about what he meant to her. The way they'd hold hands on carpets, even when no one asked them to. Something about their connection felt unfinished. Not romantic necessarily, but unspoken. And it lingered through marriages, breakups, career highs and lows. Through it all, Leo and Kate remained each other's constant. A phone call away, a quiet source of strength. But even then, there were things they never said. Feelings too delicate to name. Memories too sacred to unpack. Especially for Leo, because while Kate often spoke with warmth and openness about their friendship, Leo was more guarded, reserved. He'd smile when asked about her, but rarely offered anything deeply personal. He kept the emotions beneath the surface, and for decades no one pushed him to say more, until finally something changed. It wasn't during a major awards show. It wasn't a media interview. It wasn't even public at first. But in recent years, Leo made a gesture. A quiet but powerful acknowledgement of what Kate had meant to him all along. And when Kate learned the full story, it caught her off guard. Because it turns out, Leo had been holding something back. Not a scandal, not a secret, but a truth about the depth of their bond and what he'd never said out loud. And now, after 25 years, Kate finally knows. Through the years, Leo and Kate's friendship became legendary. Fans watched as they supported each other across oceans, careers, and personal struggles. When Kate married and became a mother, Leo was there. When Leo won his long-overdue Oscar, Kate stood just off stage. Eyes glassy, hand over her heart. Their bond seemed unshakable. But still, he never said it. Not the way he meant to, because Leo Dicaprio had always been careful. Careful not to blur lines. Careful not to feed the rumors. Careful not to say something that couldn't be taken back. Even when the world assumed they must have been more than friends, Leo held his tongue. Interviews came and went. Decades passed. And the truth, the one thing he may have wanted to say most, remained hidden. But not long ago, a quiet moment shattered that silence. It wasn't a grand announcement. It wasn't meant for headlines. But it was real, and it revealed a side of Leo few had seen. During a private tribute, a gesture not broadcast, not publicized, Leo finally acknowledged what Kate had meant to him since they were young and wide-eyed on that freezing soundstage in Mexico. It wasn't about Titanic. It wasn't even about Hollywood. It was about who they had become together, and what he never had the courage to admit until time and distance made it safe. For Leo, the truth had always been too big for words. How do you explain the person who grounded you during your most chaotic years? The person who knew you before the world did, and still sees through all the fame? For a long time he couldn't, but his actions finally began to speak. It started with a handwritten note, passed quietly behind the scenes. Then came the interview moment, brief, easy to miss, when he broke form and called her the kind of person he'd always hoped to become. Not professionally, personally. And finally, when Kate received word, through a mutual friend, or maybe directly, she realized what had been held back all those years. Leo hadn't just admired her. He hadn't just trusted her. He had built part of himself around her steadiness, her loyalty, her refusal to let fame turn them into strangers. That was the truth he never told her. And the weight of it hit her harder than she expected. Not because it changed anything between them, but because it reframed everything. Suddenly, those quiet moments made sense. The way he looked at her during their on-screen reunion in Revolutionary Road. The way he held her hand a beat too long during red carpets. The way he always smiled a little smaller, softer, when she was near. He had never said it, but he had always felt it. And now, after 25 years, Kate Winslet finally knew. Kate Winslet had always believed she knew Leo better than anyone. They'd grown up together in a way few people ever do. Thrown into unimaginable fame at an age when most are still figuring out who they are. And through it all, Kate had been his constant. Cheering him on, grounding him, reminding him who he was outside the spotlight. So when she learned the truth, that Leo had quietly carried a deeper emotional weight for years, it didn't make her angry. It didn't even surprise her, not really. But it did make her pause. Because it wasn't about romance. It wasn't a confession of love or some dramatic revelation. It was something quieter, something more enduring. The kind of truth you don't say out loud because it matters too much. The kind that slips into the spaces between words and stays there, unspoken. And for Kate, that kind of truth was both beautiful and heartbreaking. She began to revisit moments in her memory. Small gestures, long silences, looks that lingered. All the times Leo could have said something but didn't. All the times he let the world believe what it wanted, while he kept the truth tucked away like something too fragile to expose. Fans had always assumed they knew everything, that their friendship was uncomplicated, that if something more had existed, we would have heard about it by now. But the reality was far more intimate than any tabloid headline. It wasn't a love story in the traditional sense, it was something even rarer. A bond so deep it didn't need to be named. And maybe that's why Leo never said it. Because putting it into words might have changed it forever. Still, when Kate finally understood, when she realized what he had kept to himself all those years, it hit her in a way she hadn't expected. She'd always felt close to Leo, always known that what they shared was different. But this was another layer, a final puzzle piece. And the timing of it all made it even more emotional. Because 25 years after Titanic, they had both lived lifetimes. They had loved, lost, grown, changed. And somehow, through it all, they had circled back to each other. Not as actors, not as public figures, but as two people who had quietly shaped each other's lives. Kate didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to, but those who knew her best saw a shift. A softness when she mentioned his name. A quiet reverence in interviews when she was asked about their friendship. And fans noticed it too. Suddenly, old videos began resurfacing. Their interviews from 1997. Their reunion on stage in 2009. That emotional embrace at the Oscars. Viewers started seeing them differently. Not as missed lovers, but as something even more enduring. They hadn't missed a chance. They had preserved one. The truth Leo held back wasn't some grand secret. It was something sacred. A quiet knowing he wasn't ready to share until the time was right. And when he finally did, it didn't just reach Kate. It reached all of us. For Leo, carrying that unspoken truth for 25 years wasn't an accident. It was a choice. In a world where everything is shared, where feelings are tweeted and moments are staged, he chose to protect something private, something real. And that choice shaped his entire connection with Kate. Over the years, both of them were asked the same question dozens of times. Why didn't you ever date? Why didn't it ever happen? And each time they smiled and deflected, said they were too young, too close, that the timing was never right. But behind those answers was something neither of them could quite say aloud. Maybe it did happen in its own way. Not in romantic terms, not in headlines, but in the kind of loyalty most people never experience. The kind that doesn't fade when the cameras stop. That loyalty came through in the way Leo always showed up. When Kate was honored in London, he flew halfway around the world to stand beside her. When she lost a loved one, he sent flowers not just once but every year. Quiet gestures, private ones, the kind that didn't ask for credit. It was all part of the truth he never said but always lived. And Kate, once she realized that, seemed to carry him differently too. Fans noticed. There was a look in her eyes when she spoke of him. Not of a friend, not of an old co-star, but of someone who had taken up permanent residence in her past. The press always wanted a fairy tale ending, a romance, a wedding. But what they missed was the real story. That Leo and Kate had created something even more rare. A lifelong bond defined by restraint, respect, and something deeper than infatuation. In some ways, what Leo held back made that bond stronger. Because he never used it, never exploited it, never let the world take it from him. And by the time he finally revealed how much Kate meant to him, through a gesture, a sentence, a moment that only she would fully understand, it wasn't about what could have been. It was about what always was. Fans, too, began to reflect differently. The conversations online changed. Instead of asking why didn't they ever date, people started saying, maybe they didn't have to. Maybe their story wasn't unfinished, it was just quiet. And maybe Leo's truth wasn't a delayed confession, but a long-held protection. A protection of her, of them, of what they built before the world ever knew their names. Some truths are too big to say when you're young. You don't have the words. You don't even know what you're feeling. But time has a way of pulling things forward, of making the unspeakable clearer. And when that truth finally surfaces, it doesn't rewrite the past. It gives it meaning. So when Leo finally let the truth out, when Kate finally understood just how much she'd meant to him all that time, it wasn't too late. It was right on time. In the end, there was no grand confession, no viral headline, no dramatic reunion, just a truth long protected, finally understood. For Kate, that truth arrived not with shock, but with clarity. She'd spent decades by Leo's side, through every stage of his life. She'd seen the boy on the Titanic set become a global star. She'd watched him rise, stumble, and rise again. And through it all, she thought she knew everything about him. But even the closest people in our lives carry pieces of themselves we never see, until the right moment comes. And that moment came, not in their 20s, when the world watched their every move, but much later, when the cameras had moved on, when the story everyone thought they knew had already been written. That's when Leo finally revealed what he'd never said out loud. That Kate was more than a co-star, more than a friend. She was an anchor, a mirror, a witness to his most formative years. And whether he ever found the words or not, she had shaped him. What touched Kate the most wasn't what he said. It was that he waited until he was ready, until it wouldn't change what they had, only deepen it. She didn't need validation. She didn't need closure. But she did need the truth. And when it finally came, it softened everything. The weight of years, the questions left unasked, the emotion that had always lived between them but never quite had a name. And in the quiet space of that understanding, they found something rare, peace. They didn't need to go back. They didn't need to wonder what if, because what they'd shared, through every movie, every red carpet, every tearful embrace, had never been pretend. It had been real, just not loud. That's what made it last. And now fans have started to see it too, to rewatch old footage with new eyes, to notice the subtle glances, the inside jokes, the moments where neither of them said anything, but everything was understood. Because the truth Leo held back for 25 years wasn't about regret. It was about reverence. He didn't speak it because he didn't want to lose it. Because some connections are too sacred to be filtered through fame or pressed into sound bites. Because sometimes, the quietest truths are the ones that echo the loudest, when they finally come to light. And maybe that's why, even now, their bond still draws such fascination. Not because of what did or didn't happen between them, but because it reminds us of something universal, that not all love stories look the same. Some are written in gestures, in years of silence, in the way someone shows up when it matters again and again, in the things they never say but always mean. That's the story Leo and Kate gave us. And now that the truth has finally surfaced, the world sees it more clearly than ever. For more emotional stories, check out this video.